Hi and welcome to Gay Christian Collab. My name is Aite and today we're discussing a question that was sent in by one of our viewers. It goes like this. Okay, I'm slightly confused. What about the verse in Leviticus that says being gay isn't okay with God? I'm not hating on you guys. I'm confused about my sexuality and would really like to hear you guys talk about the places in the Bible that condemn homosexuality. Thanks. Hello and welcome. So today we're going to be tackling the verses in Leviticus that condemn homosexuality. This was brought in by one of our viewers and I'm happy to answer the question for you. One thing we need to realize that the Bible was written in a certain context. It was written in a certain period and within a certain culture. In the Bible, we have what we call the Mosaic Code. And the Mosaic Code was pretty much the law for the Hebrews at the time. And the Bible has a list of 613 laws which belong to the Mosaic Law. More than 300 of them are no longer being used at all today. Now, let's look at the first verse in Leviticus, one of the verses in Leviticus that condemn homosexuality, which is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22. Now, verse 22 mentions lying with another man as with a woman. But if we look up in the earlier parts of the chapter, we'll find that verses 6 to 20 really talk about incest, not having sex with your aunt, your mother, your brother, your uncle, and that sort of thing. What is interesting though is that in verse 21, the Bible talks about ritual sex and sacrifice to a Canaanite god called Molech. Now that's very interesting because right next to that is the verse that is used to condemn homosexuality. In Leviticus 20, from verse 2, we see another reference which condemns homosexuality. But from verse 2, we have another reference again to the god Molech, which is also known as, we'll find other references to the god Molech as Baal or Chemosh in other parts of the Bible and at different times in history. Now, the worship and the ceremonies to the god Molech involved human sacrifices. People had to sacrifice their babies, their children. It involved cannibalism and it involved homosexual sex acts as well. Now, it is interesting that in both the verses that are used to condemn homosexuality in Leviticus all have the references to the pagan rituals attributed to the god Molech. It's in verse 13 that we have the same thing. And another thing you'll notice about both verses, Leviticus 18:22 and Leviticus 20:13, is that in addition to all the in addition to the verses condemning homosexuality, we also have references to incest. So in some ways, all of these are linked together and linked to the practice of pagan rituals to the god Molech. We need to also realize that in the context that the Bible was written, these things were used to prevent people from doing certain things. That's why there were laws. Now, the two things that the people of the Bible at the time were concerned with was inbreeding, because inbreeding could bring about all sorts of illnesses and so on, and they wanted to deter people from having sex with members of their own family and creating disease. And those were the practices associated with the ceremonies of the god Molech. Now, the problem with using the verses in Leviticus to condemn homosexuality include the fact that they were about rituals, they were about orgies, and they were not about sexual orientation. It had nothing to do with sexual orientation. They were supposed to promote national cohesion and deter people from inbreeding. Now, we'll find certain examples of that in, with superstitious beliefs such as, no sweeping at night. Why is it wrong to sweep at night? Well, at the time when, that whole concept came about, there was no electricity and there was no light, and so if you swept, you probably could sweep something valuable and throw it away. We have the same thing about walking under ladders. What's wrong with walking under ladders? It has nothing to do with luck, but everything to do with safety. There's another one about covering your mouth when you sneeze, because that's how your soul escapes. If when you sneeze, it has nothing to do with your soul, but just a question of sanity. That's why you cover your mouth. And so just in the same way, the people of the Bible at that time had these rules, if you will, to prevent them from doing certain things that the powers that be at the time didn't want them to engage in. Another thing we should be careful about when using Leviticus to condemn homosexuality is that Christ's death and resurrection abolished the law. Galatians 3:13 says, Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. Christ died and rose again. Galatians 5:1 says, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. The yoke of slavery is the yoke of the law. Galatians 5:18 says, if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. And it's the same way that in today's world, we have pastors who might be disabled in some way, but back in the Bible times, you could not even have any slight defect in your eye. Nobody goes around these days testing your the pastor's testicles to make sure they're without blemish before they're ordained. In the same way, eating pork was considered unclean. People eat pork every day today. Christians eat pork without thinking twice about it. Having sex with a woman in her period was abominable in those days. But all of these things we no longer consider essential today. Now we need to remember certain things about this. Forcing people to live under the law, like the laws in Leviticus, is putting people under the curse. Now you need to decide whether you want to live under the law or whether you want to live under the Spirit. You also need to understand that there was no concept of gay relationships in the time of the Bible. They had no concept of it and could not have written about it, and that's why it's not in the Bible. The Bible is silent on six. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on here. I'll say it again. The Bible is silent on same-sex relationships. Say it fast after me. And sex outside of a loving relationship, whether it's gay or straight, is frowned upon by the Bible. So it has nothing to do with your sexuality. So I hope this answers your question, and keep your other questions coming in. I'll be happy to answer them whenever. Take care and have a wonderful day. Be blessed.